Hey everybody, Chris with How to Tesla here. So today I'd like to talk about what we have for this week as far as the Tesla stock is concerned. So today the top rated analyst Wolf Research has downgraded Tesla from buy to hold. It's making a lot of headlines out there and it's definitely understandable. Wolf Research has said that basically with the Silicon Valley bank crisis going on, that funding is going to be tightened for a lot of the tech companies out there and the higher growth companies that are a bit more risky. Based on what happened with Silicon Valley Bank, a lot of lenders are really concerned that the banks are going to go belly up and they're not really wanting to lend money to anyone deemed as higher risk. So there's a lot of speculation that this is going to lead to a bit of a sell-off for the higher risk and the tech stocks. It very well could. Wolf Research also mentioned that they still have a positive outlook for Tesla. So my 2 cents on this, I don't actually think that it's going to affect Tesla from the standpoint that the lending is really going to matter whatsoever to Tesla specifically. They have more than enough money sitting there, and as far as I can tell, they didn't have any exposure to Silicon Valley Bank, and I'm assuming they probably don't have a lot of exposure to any smaller banks. I don't think that this is going to be an issue whatsoever for Tesla, although they could trend slightly down based on the fact that the higher risk segment of the market is probably going to trend down based on this news, because it's going to affect those companies much more than it would a company like Tesla. I also find that this is probably going to be a positive overall for Tesla. Funding for the smaller EV companies, the competition to Tesla, is going to be much harder, and they're already facing challenges in producing the cars. You know, it's much harder building an EV than it is a traditional gas-powered vehicle. So I think it's actually going to give Tesla a bigger lead faster than it would have had this not happened. Tesla doesn't have a need to acquire any lending. And unfortunately, the way that the macro environment is, Tesla could still drop just because of what's going on with it. The good news is that Silicon Valley Bank has been bailed out. I know the government isn't saying that it's actually a bailout, but if you're paying more for the collateral on these loans than the actual market value of it, it's a bailout. The taxpayers are going to be the ones fronting the bill. I know that all of this money has been put aside, you know, in case of banking emergencies. But the fact is, there shouldn't be any banking emergencies. The really concerning part to me is that this isn't actually going to be changing, as of yet, any regulation. So it's not fixing the problem. It's just throwing money at it, but not actually changing it so that it doesn't happen again in the future. So I guess we'll see how this goes. And it's pretty crazy. Even the bigger banks' stock prices have come down quite a bit. Your JP Morgan, banks like that, which is kind of surprising, and just shows a bit of how fearful the market can be. Although I don't really think that there's going to be any issues with the bigger banks out there. There is probably going to be more pain in the banking industry with the smaller and mid-tier banks giving out a lot of these loans. I know, for instance, one of the banks was for high-end mortgages for people who were financially in a higher class than, 99.9% of people out there. And with that, I guess they were giving out loans to people who had started tech companies and didn't really go through the fundamentals of the tech company. They're just pumping out because they're in the tech business, giving them mortgages, and just making really stupid decisions like that. The worst is some of these banks are taking major hits on risky crypto bets. Like, I really don't understand how a bank is supposed to be the safest place you can park your money, and the owners of the banks are making decisions like this. It absolutely blows my mind. Hopefully the bigger banks aren't doing it. I would assume not. They're under a much stricter regulation than the smaller banks, but it is really pretty concerning that these smaller banks are making bets like this with our money, you know, and then it's us who's going to have to be bailing the banks out because this is all coming from our tax dollars. So it's really kind of a crappy scenario for all of us. But overall, how this affects Tesla, I don't think that it's going to hurt it at all. I mean, the price may go down from the macro environment that this is contributing to the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that we have in this environment. But Tesla's got so much money in the bank; they're fine. There's nothing that is going to be concerning for them. And I think that they see the writing on the wall that a lot of the smaller banks are going to be having these issues, and I would absolutely be shocked if this affected them at all in the future, because knowing what Tesla's done in the past, I would see them that any funds that they would have that could potentially be at risk, they would have moved and put somewhere where this type of situation shouldn't affect them whatsoever. So actually, I see this as a pretty big positive for Tesla. I think that it's going to hurt its competitors. I think that giving them a bigger lead is just going to help solidify the fact that they're going to be the #1 EV manufacturer out there, and probably #1 car manufacturer out there in the future. So I personally see this as kind of a good thing as far as the Tesla stock goes. In the short term, it's probably not going to be all that great. I'm assuming this week it's probably going to stay close to flat. They dropped 12% last week, which is a gigantic amount. So I think even with all of the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that's going on, I don't think that it's really going to affect Tesla too much. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Wall Street looks at this bailout as a gigantic positive, and none of the stocks, other than the banking stocks, are going to go down. But I definitely think that this is going to affect a lot of the tech companies out there. I just don't think that it's going to affect Tesla whatsoever. So for this week, I'm thinking it's going to be fairly flat, maybe go down a little bit, possibly go up a little bit. But I think it's going to be pretty mundane for Tesla. I mean, obviously, it's a shot in the dark. Short term, you never really know. We'll see how it plays out. But yeah, things are actually looking pretty good for Tesla here, and I'm excited to see what the future holds. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed my perspective. I'll see you next video. Thanks.